Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first Ginni AI webinar. My name is May Medhat. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ginni, and I'm very excited to be hosting this event today. And for those who might not know about Ginni, we are all about transforming how B2B sales teams operate. We are here to help B2B sales teams for growing companies build a stronger sales foundation with AI assistant, AI coaching, and strategy builder. Our tools are basically designed to help you optimize and scale your sales foundation and your operations. And we have poured a lot of passion for B2B sales into this product. And we're here today to share actually some of this passion and the insights that helped us shape the product. And I'm very happy to be joined by someone who played a crucial role in building and shaping the first product of Ginni. Rachel. Rachel is one of the best and most expert sales leaders in the Bay Area. Rachel is a sales director at Everlaw and with an incredible background in leading sales teams at Bivy, Salesforce, and MuleSoft. Rachel is a mentor, an advisor, and a source of endless inspiration for me personally. Rachel, welcome to the webinar. We're very happy to have you today. How about we start with a quick introduction and sharing some of your background into the B2B sales world?
Happy to. Thank you, Mai, for that introduction. Hey, folks. So as Mai mentioned, my name is Rachel Biers. I'm currently a sales director at Everlaw, which is a legal tech company that's based in Oakland. I've been in tech sales for the last 12 years, both as an account executive, an individual contributor, and then as a sales leader running first line, second line, and third line sales orgs, running the gamut of, as Mai mentioned, Series A to D companies to public organizations like Oracle and Salesforce. And I think the past decade in B2B sales has been really fascinating, especially with the proliferation of tech and AI continuing to rear its head, both in the products that we're selling, as well as how we use it to be more effective sellers. So I'm really excited to have that conversation today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's so great to hear about your journey. So let's dive in. I think we have a lot to cover today, from the impact of AI to building sales foundation and strategy and scaling sales teams. We will wrap this session by some Q&A. So please don't forget to put your questions into the Q&A section. And we have a little surprise at the end for everyone. Okay, so let's start. Rachel, you have been part of different companies and different stages, from startups to more mature organizations. Let's start by discussing how sales strategies differ between these different stages, like seed stage or a startup that just launched, and how this should change as you grow and into more like Series C or D.
Yeah, it's a great question. What I've found is that when you're at an early stage startup, the whole focus is trying to test out as many different approaches as possible, right? To try and identify what actually works. This often means doing things in an unscalable way. So right now, the focus is not on how do you build a process that 20 people can do. It's really just, to a certain extent, throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Thinking about what messaging is going to resonate, who's actually going to respond, figuring out all the different parts of your sales process. I mean, at that point, you're even just trying to figure out what pricing should be. And then really what I see is the difference when you start to mature and you get to that later stage of, call it Series C or D, you've figured out product market fit, you've got, you know, a client base. And so at that point, it's really about scaling and optimizing. I'll give you an example from from my experience in terms of the flexibility that you need and really that unscalable approach and just figuring out what resonates with people at an early stage company. When I was at a Series A company, we were trying to figure out how to negotiate on price, right? This was the first time that we as an organization was going through a formal procurement cycle. So we had to figure out our talk track for, all the SOC 2 reports for security. We were trying to figure out, well, what could we get as concessions in negotiation? And we just threw out some asks, like asking for a 2-year contract, which had never happened yet with any of our clients. And lo and behold, they say yes. And so that became a standard part of our practice. Well, we're putting in all this work. Why shouldn't we ask for 2 years instead of one? And it feels like just really simple changes like that. But at that point, nothing has been defined. So it gives you a lot of, I think, creative opportunity to see what actually ends up working. And also trying to figure out who your best customer is. To me, that's really the key goal when you're at an early stage.
Yeah, 100%. Have you seen any like common mistakes that usually early stage companies make when they're like scaling or at least like going to the market?
Yeah, there's a couple things that come up, and this is hard, right? Because as a founder, you've poured so much of your passion, of your time, your family's time into this product. And so a lot of folks try to accelerate that early stage to being able to scale their sales as soon as they start to get some signal that people are interested. So I think overall, sometimes people jump to that too quickly. What does that look like? That means, oh, well, we need to establish a massive sales org and we need to bring in a VP of sales right now to start running this. I don't think you need a VP of sales until you've got 3 to 5 sales folks. And as a founder, you're really invested and a part of every sale. I do think that that's something that should continue. I think once we start to see some early success, people often hire the wrong profile of sales reps. They want to look for people that have had a lot of past success. But what we forget is that if you bring in that person that's only worked at big brands for their career, they've blown out their number, they've been incredibly successful. But when they come into your environment, they're not going to be given the same types of resources. And so I've seen a lot of people do that because they look at the metrics and they forget to think about the similarity, or rather the lack of similarity in environments. And I think people, because of that, have loose performance management, right? I think you've got 30 days to decide if this person that's going to help drive revenue for your company is going to work. I'll share an example from Bevy, which is the last kind of smaller organization I was a part of. When I joined as an account executive. And the very second day, I took my first discovery call with a prospect. I knew very little about the product. We did not have a clear sales pitch, but that was the way that you get people to learn. You got to throw them into the deep end, and really their ability to figure that out, I think, gives you a great indication of if they're going to be able to last in that sales org.
This is spot on. My next question was actually going to ask you about hiring mistakes, like which positions should you hire first or prioritize as a founder? But I think you answered this already. Okay. In today's world and AI and all the cool things we can do with AI, what role do you think AI can actually play in helping companies in this transition from early stage to a more mature growth stage? Have you seen any tools or anything that actually can help companies optimize that?
Yeah. I think there's a myth that you have to be an established enterprise company and sales org to be able to take advantage of AI. So I think what's really fascinating and really exciting with, frankly, products like Ginni AI is that you're going to be able to arm smaller organizations with valuable insights about their data and their customers way faster. It's going to be something that they can afford when previously they may not have thought that they had the ability to do that, right? It's going to give you more efficiency and agility. You can scale account research, you can scale prospecting and outreach. You can bubble up all of those insights a lot earlier using technology than you would have needed to do through manual effort. So I think what that's going to mean is that organizations that have, you know, 1 to 5 to 10 sales reps, they're actually going to be way more agile now than they ever were before. So I'm very interested actually to see what that looks like over the course of the next year or two.
That's music to my ears. That's exactly what we tell our customers. uh, Okay, moving on to another topic, I think, like speaking of scaling, I think the biggest hurdle of like growing a sales team, like building a sales team is already challenging, but growing that sales team and managing a sales team is actually a harder job.
Mhm.
What should founders like prioritize when they are hiring their first sales rep? What qualities or skills is more critical to focus on?
Yeah. Um, so this is going to tie into what I had mentioned about the hiring mistakes that folks often make. I think the number one thing that people have to look for is intellectual curiosity, right? Because you need someone that has a little bit more of that entrepreneurial spirit as a salesperson, because a lot of what they're going to be doing is not fully established. You know, it's not black and white. It's someone who's going to be able to operate in the gray. So they need to want to be a part of solving the problems, creating the plays, creating the playbook, and that's again why I say sometimes that means shying away from sales folks that have exclusively built their careers at larger brands and market leaders, because all of that has already been established for them. It doesn't mean that they're not great salespeople, but they're just not the type of profile that you would be looking for, because for early stage, especially for a first sales rep, you're looking for someone that's going to be a builder, not a scaler.
Yeah. And how do you know it's time to actually scale the sales organization? Like, is there a metrics or a revenue number, or like other internal metrics that you should look at before deciding to scale the team, let's say from 4 or 5 people and hire more AEs or even a manager?
Yeah. Um, it's such a good question because I think I often see that folks do this a little too quickly. And I think that's because we're only focused on the number of sales individuals and what their attainment is and how much revenue they can bring in. To me, when what you need to see in order to know that it's time to scale your sales team is that you have to have signal from your market, right? It's not just about, okay, now I have 3 sales reps that hit their target, now I can grow that to 10. You need to be able to have signal from the market, which means you have inbound leads that are going to help to feed a larger sales team, right? You need to have a current sales team that is performing well, right? The sort of best practice metric is that you have 80% of your reps hitting their quota, right? And I also think when you look at those different stages of the deal cycle, you've got inbound leads, you've got demand from the market, you have a sales org that is performing well, but then also with your client base, you've got strong net dollar retention. You have people that had made the decision to purchase, and they're also increasing their spend with you, because ultimately that's what you want. You want people to come in, see value in your product, and then actually grow with you, right? So to me, it's not just one facet that gives you the signal. You have to think about that holistically across new customer and existing.
Yeah. Also, as a founder, and I manage the sales team for some time, I think scaling is usually comes with its own set of challenges. Like growing from a 2, 3, 4 people team into a larger team. Like what challenges usually, or have you seen, come with that scale, and how can we like overcome this, or how can we make the shift more effectively?
Yeah. I'm actually really curious to hear if any of this resonates with you in your experience. I think when you're making that transition, change management, right? You're going to be shifting the way that you do things for the existing reps who have been seeing success. They like the stage that they're at. What are you going to introduce? You're probably going to introduce more structure. You're probably also going to introduce clearer KPIs and expectations for those reps. So to me, transparent communication is going to be so important because you have to make sure it's not shrouded in mystery and people don't know what's happening. Be really clear. Hey, this means we're being successful. The goal is that we grow, right? That's the only way that the company grows. It's the only way that the revenue grows. So I think making sure that there's that constant transparent communication with the existing team to let them know how their impact contributes to the company and why that means that we're scaling. I think as maybe a founder, and you tell me if this is right, it might mean relinquishing some control because previously you were the CEO, basically every other executive acronym, right? And the VP of sales. And so now, if you're going to be bringing in a sales manager or a VP, you may not know every detail about every deal, right? And that's hard. You have to place your trust in someone else who maybe has built their career and therefore has a deeper level of expertise and experience within sales. So I'd be curious if you agree with that. And then when you create a larger team, you have to put more systems in place, right? You have to have more structure. That also means with the KPIs, you have performance management, which may be an adjustment for some of the reps. So I think throughout all of this, clear communication is really, really key, not just to the sales team, but to the broader company about what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's process. Having a process in place will help like both sides, managers and CEO, and also like the team itself.
Yeah.
Um, Lack of like supporting organizations or supporting functions that actually help the sales team thrive. Because as you said, like in early reps, they are like doers. So you put them into a sales meeting and they will figure it out. But not every hire you will make later on will have the same skills. So managing that also, some people, they need structure, they need a playbook, they need like a certain process to follow. So scaling too fast before having that, and before having, like as you said, the system itself, like are we on top of like recording calls, are we listening, are we coaching the team on what best practices, how to answer certain questions, how to handle objections and all of that. I think some companies, and I did that mistake before, like scaling before we have that setup in place, which actually would be very hard to implement later on. And also we lose like a ton of information that we could gather early on, and it will be helpful in building the playbook and building like understanding our customers and so on.
Why you're saying that, I think, is often a huge regret for folks. And it's a personal pet peeve of mine anytime that I've seen this, is that if you're not great about data hygiene and documenting what works and what doesn't, even right from the beginning, you lose all of that. And then you have to spend so much more time once you are a more established team to try and basically redo a lot of that. So having those best practices from the beginning, even when you are a small team, to me, that's really, really critical.
Yeah, and that's why Ginni exists. Okay. Perfect. I think moving on to another topic, I think um, improving sales processes. Like, I would love to hear your thoughts about how can we improve a sales process as a company? Like, what advice would you give to small team? What quick wins they should like have or aim to have early on? I think we answered some of that on like the processes, but is there anything else, any advice you would like to give to founders or sales leaders?
Yeah. I think again, going back to the passion of founders and folks that are taking the time to build their own business, their own product, sometimes that can result in jumping to anything that gives you positive reinforcement or feedback. So I think having the discipline to pull that back and be more targeted is really important. What do I mean by that? I think it's so important to figure out who your target market is and your customer base as quickly as possible. How do you do that at the beginning? You don't have a lot of data. And so you're probably reaching out to anyone that's willing to talk to you, and that's okay. But once you start to get people buying the product, expressing that interest, interview those clients as much as you possibly can. Ask them for as much feedback as you can. Why did they buy? What was the key factor? What really tipped them over to making that decision? Who else were they looking at? So you can get an understanding about what that competitive landscape might be. How is your client going to measure success and determine, yes, this was the right decision to purchase this product, right? What that will allow you to do with that feedback is you can basically reverse engineer it and make sure that that's a part of your sales process so that you can be more efficient the next time you come across a similar prospect to who's in your current client base. So to me, that is like priority number one. The client feedback, the client referrals, that's going to get you to a certain point. You also have to commit to the marketing effort, right? The brand awareness, because that's what's going to create hopefully more of that viral effect. And then we just talked about this, but investing in some technology so that you can actually analyze data on a regular basis so that you can continue learning about your process, right? This goes back to our conversation about why AI is really going to change the landscape for these smaller organizations. You can do that and you can make those changes so much more quickly, frankly, than an organization that has 500 people. So to me, that's your superpower, is the ability to harness technology, get those insights, and make those changes really quickly. I think that's something that you've even done with Ginni, right? Making those pivots early on and now really grasping onto something that people want.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, was our like when we launched it, were mainly targeting US and UK companies, mainly English-speaking countries. And after we launched, we got an overwhelming demand from the MENA region, mainly because most of my network is over there. But we got like requests for Arabic support, and we dig deeper and we found it's not only about Arabic, but actually it's the same in other emerging markets. So we shifted quickly and we're focusing on that as a go-to-market strategy, which I think has been very successful so far. Like the early signals we're getting is very positive. Okay, my next question is about challenges. What are the most challenges companies face while scaling? Like assuming a company does everything that you said, and they are trying to look at the data and optimize their sales offer, efforts and team and all of that. Is there any tactics in terms of like the sales process itself or the selling process, like how they sell their product, how they promote or communicate the value or the ROI of their product to their customers? Is there anything that needs to grow with us from the early sales pitch, selling to more like growing, more enterprise companies?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think there's a lot that I could say, and maybe let me frame it in this way. I think that when you're in that early stage, you're selling to people that are early adopters, right? They understand the vision that you're painting. Even if you don't have everything figured out yet, they're bought in to the vision and they're willing to be that guinea pig, let's say, right? Because they can see the longer term value. At some point, you're going to have to move on from those early adopters to more enterprise organizations, or what we call the early majority, right? And so when you start to make that transition, there's more that you're going to have to do. You're probably going to have more of an established onboarding or implementation process, right? People are going to care about, okay, what can this do for me? But also, like, how are you going to help me be successful? And I think that means that you have these more established processes that have to come into play. I'll just do a quick plug here. There's a book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore, and it talks exactly about this, right? Which is anyone who has a new product, they have to focus on one group of customers at a time, or else you get stretched too thin. But then what you have to change is you get one group and you have to move on to the next one, because that's what happens when you go from an early stage. You continue to get funding, you have to grow your customer base, and what was working initially, you're probably going to have to change that. Does that mean you change your product offering? Do you have add-ons as a way of doing more expansion? Does that mean that you move up market and you actually offer additional components of your product, right? That's more maybe focused on, I don't know, I feel like single sign-on is always the thing that people look for when they go to enterprise companies, but other things that larger established companies are going to look for. So I don't know if it's a specific tactic, because I don't think it's as simple as just saying pivot and do this one thing and that will continue to drive your success. I actually think the fundamentals are the same, which is you have to continue looking at your process and seeing if there are things that used to work that aren't, and figuring out how do we fix that, or how do we test things out to see if that's going to get us to that next phase of growth.
Oh, yeah, very interesting. I think what I'm hearing is as you grow your product towards more different markets or different segments, customer segments, you also need to scale your processes. Like, I think the supporting function, this is a very overlooked aspect of sales. Like, as you said, your onboarding, your guides, the ease of onboarding, the ease of integrations, if there's any integrations and all of that, and
Yeah.
onboard even new salespeople to the team. So having this needs to go hand in hand as you scale your team and as you scale your operations as well.
That was a way more succinct summary, Mai. Thank you for doing that. Salespeople at the beginning, they're kind of jacks of all trades. So they're doing everything. And at a certain point, they actually don't have the ability to do that. And they probably don't have the expertise to continue doing that. Right. And so you have to find those specialists that can then do that part of the process super, super well. But again, I think like we talked about, sometimes people have the urge to do that a little too quickly.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think let's dive into something that I think are very relevant to a lot of people. AI. Um, You have seen how AI started to reshape the sales landscape, and you are part of a company selling an AI product. I will give you a chance to talk more about that. But like, as you see, as you are following and testing some of the products and trends into AI, how do you see AI transforming B2B landscape, particularly for a small and medium-sized business? Um,
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think we touched on this a little bit, in that people that are able to successfully leverage AI within sales, it's going to level the playing field again of smaller organizations versus larger ones. And I think it's really going to empower SMB organizations, right? Because what it's doing is you're able to pull away all of the, I think, low value tasks that people just have to do as a part of sales. And instead, you get to focus it on what they're great at, right? Which is building those relationships, doing deep discovery, and closing deals. I think what it's going to do, though, is you're already seeing so much noise from people who are just using AI almost as a replacement for salespeople and saying, this is my whole strategy. I'm just going to automate everything. And I think what you're now seeing is that because there's so much noise, there's actually a greater need for the sales process itself to be competitive differentiation, because anybody can talk to a bot and have some questions answered, right? So now the way that you're going to differentiate yourself is you kind of have to be human, right? That means where possible, in-person meetings, right? Building those relationships, personalizing your outreach based off of what you know, not just about what's written on someone's LinkedIn, but about their personality and what you think is going to resonate with them. So to me, that's how I think it's going to transform.
so I don't think AI is going to replace salespeople.
I hope not.
Yeah.
That
Uh,
would be.
yeah. Can you share any like specific examples from your experience about like AI has driven like significant improvement into the sales process or performance of the team? Um, how do you use AI at Everlaw?
Yeah. Oh, this is a good question. So a specific example, I would say, is a lot of times an area of focus or coaching for both my team and other sales teams is efficient and consistent follow-up, right? Because when we go back to how do we differentiate, a big part of that is that timeliness, being able to follow up with the summary, making sure that we're scheduling the next step. It's fundamentals, but it's something that actually really does impact the impression that you make with your prospect. And so something that we were noticing is that there was inconsistencies with follow-up or when it was happening. And look, people are going to move on to other products and get other demos. And so being quick with that is so important. And so one thing that we've done is we've used like call intelligence software to help us summarize key pain points, key challenges from the call. And that greatly reduces the effort on the salesperson to have to comb through their notes or listen to those calls again. And with that summarized, it's way easier to make sure that that gets out, certainly same day, the hour after,
Mm.
as opposed to, oh no, I'm moving on to the next thing and now I've forgotten about that and 20 others. So I just wanted to give, I think, just a tactical example, but one that has a really broader impact on the success within a sales cycle. So that's one thing that we've done.
Perfect. Um, I think there's a lot of like misconceptions about AI in sales. What are the biggest? Like, have you seen any misconceptions, or how can you overcome these to make the most of AI tools?
I mean, I think you said this sort of as a joke, but really the main thing is that people think that they're a replacement, right? They think, oh, I'm going to have this tool now and I'm going to feed it some data or some instructions, and there we go. I don't have to check it anymore.
Mm.
And I've started to see this debate happening on LinkedIn and other places where sales leadership is debating this. Like, really, what is the place of AI and how much of it can it replace? Like we said, it's not replacing anyone. It shouldn't. Because even if you get the short-term benefit of, oh, there's this bot that, or this tool that's just going to respond to all of my leads, at some point, it's not going to drive value, right? And if you've just ignored it and left it alone, you now don't have a human that's going to continue to improve it. AI only gets better when you feed it feedback, right? And data. So if you set it and forget it, I don't think that your sales strategy is going to be very successful after the short term. So in my mind, right, AI tooling should augment, not replace.
Yeah, 100% I agree. Actually, I think AI is a tool that actually give us superpowers, so we can do
Yeah.
more with less, less people in the team, less time. Like, we can go faster about the things we want to achieve, which I think is a superpower to do right now.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
okay. Speaking of selling AI product, at Everlaw, you are selling a very hard product to a very hard customer segment,
Mhm.
lawyers.
Mhm.
Can you tell us more about like the unique challenges you faced? I think there's a lot of people who are building AI startups and AI products right now, and I think they might face some of these challenges. So can you speak about that?
Yeah. I think that the legal industry is an especially skeptical audience, but I think that the concerns are across the board, regardless of who your target audience is. And it boils down to two or three things, right? It's security concerns. What are you doing with my data? Where is it going? It's confidential, so I need to know exactly what is happening with it, right? There's inherent distrust because AI is something that is still really new to a lot of folks, right? And so if you don't believe that it's secure, you have a distrust about if it's going to be accurate, that's a hard place to start from when someone's trying to sell you a product that incorporates that type of technology. But then aside from the technology itself, I think you're always going to get people that believe this new wave of technology trends is just a fad. It's just a phase, and then it's going to pass, right? I think that we've seen this in almost every industry. AI is not going anywhere, but people still have that belief that, you know what, my business is going to be just fine. It's going to be okay. I'm going to still be able to get my success from the way that I've always done things. And this happens across every industry. And this is a narrative that has always been around, right? I think one example that I always point to is Sears versus Amazon, right? If you go back, I don't know, 15 years, Sears is like this leading retailer. You can go through a catalog and buy anything that you want, but there wasn't the quick adoption of technology. And then you have Amazon, which was really just around selling books as a marketplace. And it took advantage of technology and started going out and selling all these other products. And it really embraced technology. So in my mind, it's the same talk track that it has always been around a new evolution in technology. It's either get on board with how to use it effectively and responsibly, or at some point get left behind, right? Like I think that that's true. That's certainly true, I think, in the industry that Everlaw sells into, albeit maybe at a bit of a slower pace. I think that's everywhere.
Yeah. And how do you like answer or address these concerns? Do you have any practical tips on, for example, about like security and sharing data, where the data is stored and all of that? Do you have any tips that you have used, or you can share with us, for anyone who is selling an AI product, or any, I would say, like important features that needs to be built in so we can have a better answer to these skepticism?
Yeah, I think zero data retention policy is what a lot of people are looking for because there's so much fear about how their data is going to be used, right? And your data is your value, I think, in a lot of businesses. And so whatever you can do to communicate that that's going to remain safe. Zero data retention policy with any LLM that you're using. Obviously, your own security for your product is always something that we want to lead with. So you have a strong security posture with all of the various reports and certifications that your organization has. And I think being really proactive about it is one way in which you can build credibility. Don't wait for the question because you know the question is going to come up at some point, either before, during, after your demo. Address it head on because this is talking about our philosophy for how we use technology responsibly. I think if you lean in and start with that, it sets the right tone and you can take that objection off the table right from the beginning. I think the other thing that we talked about, Mai, is no AI should be something that you set and forget, right? I think the analogy that we use at Everlaw is think of it as a really smart intern. You're going to be able to get something that is substantive, is helpful, but you're always going to want to check that work or you're going to want to share feedback, right? Because there's just not enough experience yet. And then you build that up. So that's at least what we use here.
That's very insightful. I think I can really relate to the point of like being upfront and honest with customers and sharing if you expect a concern or if you expect an objection, just be bold about it and go and address that before they ask. I think this is an advice that I give to every salesperson I work with, because sometimes they shy away from showing that because they don't want to bring the topic. But I think being upfront and addressing that is actually super helpful in building credibility and trust with customers. So you're sharing in advance. Um, Okay, thank you so much, Rachel. I think that was super insightful. I know I learned a lot, and I hope the audience have learned as well. We have some questions, and please, if you have more questions, write them in the chat or the Q&A section. We'll come to that in a minute. Before that, I want to remind you that Ginni AI can help in a lot of what we talked about today. Our AI assistant and coaching can really help you put the sales process in place, especially if you're starting up or you're growing, even if you have like 3, 4, 5 people in the team and you're starting to grow, this is where we can really add value. And we have, as a thank you note to everyone who's attending today, we're offering a 30% discount for 3 months for everyone who's attending the webinar. And so keep an eye on the email. We will share details on how to claim the offer. And also, Rachel has been very generous. Rachel offered to spend some time with everyone who's signing up for Ginni, and she can they will review your sales strategy and give you advice or answer any questions you might have. Thank you, Rachel, so much. I think everyone will appreciate that. So questions, let's go into that. Okay. Any advice for new entrepreneurs who want to start but don't know how to start? Okay, I think I can take this one. I think the best answer is start, and then you'll learn a lot while starting. You can read a lot of things, you can listen to a lot of podcasts, webinars, everything, but like starting and doing the job is actually a different skill. Rachel, do you have anything to add here?
Oh, no, I mean, you're the one who is absolutely qualified to respond to that. But I think for anything that is hard or challenging or scary, you got to just do it, and that's how you're going to learn. So completely agree.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Maya and Rachel, for the insightful information. Could you please elaborate on strategies a startup founder can use to secure their very first B2B sales? This is, yeah.
I'll share my perspective, but again, I think as a startup founder, this would be good for you. The power of your network and referrals and those that you know, that is so important. I think I see this floating around LinkedIn, but your network is your net worth, right? So the people that are part of that want you to be successful. Take full advantage of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think talking to customers and talking to a lot of customers or potential customers is actually the key to refine the product, what you're offering, how you talk about the product. Leveraging your network is key because there's no kind of marketing can sell a product early on because you don't have a track record, you don't have a history, you don't have success stories and everything. But as a founder, your network, your support network, and the people you have worked with before, they can be super helpful in giving you early feedback and sometimes try your product early on and give you feedback. And if you're doing a good job in the product and they are seeing ROI, they will actually convert and start paying you. So I agree. Network start with that, and then as you grow, you will grow and build more like structured sales processes. Okay. Any new trends you have seen in sales process automation, especially using AI?
In sales process automation, I've seen a lot on the front end of people that are visiting the website and how they get engagement right from there. A lot of people are having way more, I think, complex and in-depth workflows of actually being to get someone much further down the funnel before they engage with a salesperson. So this can be like a chat bot on your website or in filling out the form, actually giving you more information and getting more information from you before they actually put you in front of someone, which I love because it's refining the top of the funnel. Beyond that, I have to say nothing immediately comes to mind, but I'll think on it.
Yeah, I think I have seen some automation into the demand generation part, like researching leads and curating the list of leads, automating sending emails and all of that. which I think is very interesting and a very straightforward use case for AI. And it's also helping like spending human time where it should be more into like demos and talking to customers once they are qualified. Okay. How can startups compete or position themselves given that competing on price or feature will be more difficult than before in the AI era? Any insights on how to positioning might change? Okay, interesting question. Yeah, competition for startups.
Maya, I'm curious to hear.
um, yeah, I think building like I don't think competing on price is it hasn't been a successful strategy, and I don't think it will be a successful strategy right now, especially that I think like technology is getting cheaper and cheaper even with AI. I think building a real value and showing the ROI early on is the key point. It's harder to build um, defensibility early on. So depending on your network and talking to your early customers to know what use case really resonate with them, so you can double down on these like use cases. So you start to like keep focusing and focusing into your niche market until you make sure that you have like a complete product. And AI can support you on that. It can help you build faster. It can help you automate some of the processes so you can ship faster, even if you are not building an AI company. But you can utilize some of the tools to understand that. Uh, I don't know. Does this answer the question? Rachel, do you have any tips?
No, I think so. I mean, I've not been quite at that earliest stage that I think is being described here. So I think again, it is you have to know inside and out your customer research and even just interviewing folks who are prospective clients, right? About what is a must-have versus a need to have,
Mm,
so that you can align your value with that.
yeah. I think the one thing I can add here is with AI, customer expectations are actually going higher and higher. So people are expecting better UX, better experience, better onboarding. So having all of that, and as a startup, you have the advantage to actually build a new product and having in mind all of that. It's harder for more mature companies and more mature product to go and change and shift how the product looks like, or for example, the UX from the ground up. So having new companies who's investing a lot into a specific use case, so solving for this specific customer base, I think you have more advantage to win for this use case. Okay, Rachel, do you think salespeople need to educate themselves on AI and how it works? Everyone is jumping on the AI and prompt engineering train. Do you think salespeople need to learn or keep up to date on the technical side?
I think that salespeople need to educate themselves on the impact that AI has. AI is now basically a component of most products that are sold. So it's inherently something that we have to understand in order to be able to convey the value. But just like any other technology trend, yeah, I think you need to understand what the potential value it drives. Again, the skepticism that people have, because that's what you want to speak to a client or a prospect. I don't think you need to have a deep understanding on the technical side, because that's not ultimately what you're going to bring up in a deal cycle, right? You want to be able to speak to the macro trends, because that positions you more as an advisor, as someone that is up to date, right? Because people want to talk to someone who is thinking about the same trends and thinking about their business the same way. So I think it's important to be educated, but you don't need to get into the weeds on the actual technology.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Okay, we have a question from Mustafa. Does gross marketing works well with B2B? Which channels? Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn?
Mm, I think it does. Um, I'll say for the last couple companies that I've been at, LinkedIn is always a go-to because you want to meet your audience where they are, and that's become an area where a lot of people are investing their time and building out their own brand. So that's where you want to meet them. I haven't seen as much on Facebook or Instagram, but that may be the markets that my organization is targeting that could look very different based off of what geo you are focused on. I mean, look, when we are thinking about growth marketing, even things like Reddit pop up, right? So there's all these different channels depending on where your potential buyers are. I think that's the main message.
Yeah, 100%. I think it depends on the industry. It depends on where your customers spend their time, and you should be there. You should have a voice, and you should be loud about it, actually. Okay. One more question. What is the stage where AI mission ends and human must involve in the sales?
I don't know that I would think about it in that structure of the AI tooling goes to one point and then the human picks it up. I actually think it's probably more in parallel to your previous point of it being a superpower and really augmenting. I actually think it's more intertwined, that the AI is informing you or again automating certain processes and you are there to inspect and to make sure that um, you're communicating the value. So I think I might push back or disagree slightly with thinking about it in a phased approach as opposed to doing it together.
100%. I also agree. I think it's more of a supporting tool than or an assistant than a replacement. Um, yeah. Okay. We have another question from Noor. Thank you guys. Thank you, Rachel, a lot. What is the percentage of success that is depend on how perfect sales rep we hire?
I think we could probably both answer this one. Um, I, your success is not going to be based solely on the pedigree or how good your sales rep is. I think that when you find a really, really excellent sales rep, you're going to get success not just in terms of revenue, but the ideas that that individual is going to bring, that's going to help shape marketing, that's going to give feedback from the clients to product. So I wouldn't mark it as a percentage, but I would say that having great salespeople who actually care about more impact beyond just the dollars that they're bringing in is capable of really accelerating the growth of an early stage company, going back to, I think, the builder versus scaler. So I think they can have significant impact, but they are never the only component of driving success.
Yeah. I think this is a follow-on question. After the first 10 customers, after closing the first 10 customers, what's next? Should I do? So far, I'm the CEO and doing all the sales, no sales reps yet. So I think the question is basically after closing the first 10 B2B customers, should we hire? I think you answered this already. It's not about the number of customers. It's about other metrics that you track.
100%, right? Are there similarities with those clients that you can now actually build your ideal customer profile around? How long is it taking you to close them, right? Is it too much actually of your time to need to go through those deal cycles? Are you building a repeatable process or you're starting to get those signals? So I think it's more than just how many clients do we have.
Perfect. Okay, we have three more questions, and this one is actually very interesting. For companies in the growth stage, any tips on how to decide between geographical expansion, moving up market, like focusing on enterprise, or launching a new product offering.
Mm. Well, I think even in the example that you shared about pivoting the focus, of multilingual like translation be something that is a focus is based off of signal that you got from interest, right? So I think it is somewhat dependent on where you're getting that signal, where you're getting that interest from. I think sometimes people make the mistake that in order to have a successful company, you must be across these geographical markets. You must be able to go both, upstream and downstream. And I've seen a lot of companies, even at the later stage, stall their growth because they felt like that was an expected part of what a successful company looks like. I think a successful company is just going to where you believe there's interest and where you're getting that signal and actually delivering something that drives a ton of value. So I really think it's just repeating what you had shared earlier in response to one of the other questions.
Yeah. Like from my experience, I think one thing as a founder you can do is basically experiment. So running small experiments, testing with different markets without like shifting the whole focus or without like putting all the efforts into one basket. But you can start to, you need to pull these signals basically. So maybe launch something very small or do something in a manual way to get some feedback. And then if there is enough signals, I think you can decide that this is the right strategy for you.
And Maya, if I could add on to that, that's something that you're going to do for the entirety of running that organization, right? That's not just at a growth stage. My team is focused on running pilots in various parts of the US because they're trying to identify if there's interest, in certain areas. But I think the key is that you have to be disciplined and make sure that that pilot doesn't run for too long to where actually now you're wasting resources because you're not getting enough back. So just being disciplined in how you're running that testing.
100%. Okay, one more question. One challenge I have seen is finding the right sales people. Yes, hiring. Who can work in an ambiguous environment and early stage startups when there's no structured process. What is your advice on who to bring in at that early stage?
Yeah, I think it's tough, right? Because I said the key trait is that intellectual curiosity. How do you find that when you're looking up candidates? Well, if they've had experience with helping smaller organizations, startups grow, that's the best case scenario because you know that they've had to work through a lack of structure and really focus on building that. It could also be that they're part of various entrepreneurial, communities or associations, really anything that gives you the sense that this is someone that has helped build before. I think sometimes what that means is we will go to folks that have a little bit less experience, but have that hunger and that desire to prove themselves and are really bought into the mission of helping be a part of your company's success. I've generally found that sometimes folks that have less experience actually are able to adapt to that more. Why would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard. Like hiring the first salesperson is usually very, very hard. Because salespeople, they can actually sell themselves. So they are good at pitching themselves and like doing good at the interview process and all of that. But yeah, uh, good luck with that. Okay, I think that's it. I think Noor is asking if we can share the recording. Yes, of course, we'll share that later on. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us today.